welcome to Gear Up with BigIron.
If we ever have your sale, we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure it's the best sale we ever had.
Well, hello everybody, Mark Stock here, and this is Gear Up, brought to you by BigIron, and we're going to be doing some podcasts, and we'll have a variety of topics. The topic this episode is about the history of BigIron. Now, BigIron, Ron Stock, is North America's largest ag-focused machinery and real estate online auction company. Most people don't know, but BigIron has the largest viewing audience and the largest registered bidder base of any unreserved online auction company in North America. So, but we didn't start this way, Ron Stock. I mean, Ron Stock here, one of the co-founders.
Hello, everybody.
And when we first got into the auction business, I'll let Ron Stock tell the story of how that even come about.
Well, I understand we're supposed to be talking about history here, but I have a hard time talking about history because I'm a forward-looking guy. History actually bores the heck out of me, but I know we need to tell the story. But, you know, it does make me uncomfortable talking about the history and really putting the focus on you and me because there have been so many people help us along the way. But if that's what we're here to do, let's do it right. Let's put the focus on you and me, okay?
Yeah. Well, I guess you can first put the focus on Max and Mike.
Max and Mike Olson, yeah. Max and Mike Olson got me to go to auction school. So that was, we were just hanging out on a Saturday night, and they said, you should go to auction school, Ron. I'm like, really? And so they showed up one Sunday morning and said, my dad's like, what are those guys doing here? I go, I'm going to auction school. And after 2 or 3 hours of much debate about what a waste of time auction school would be, basically, I called Mark. Mark was in school, and I said, Mark, you got to come home and run the grain cart because I'm going to auction school. And Mark said, you're going to auction school? I go, yeah, I'm going with Mike and Max Olson. So basically, I went to auction school with them, and had those guys not showed up, I even forgot that we even talked about going to auction school. Like a month earlier, I totally forgot we talked about it. And they showed up on a Sunday morning, and that's the only reason I went to auction school, you know. And I figured when I got back home, I was kind of going to be in trouble because I had told Dad that you were going to be there to run the grain cart in a couple days, and you had told me that wasn't going to happen. And so basically, I remember you did show up and run the grain cart, and I got back, and my dad, who fought me, you know, going to auction school, when I walked in the house, I have 5 sisters, they're all around, and they're saying, do some selling. I was like, I was tired. I remember being tired Sunday afternoon when I got back, and it's like, girls, I'll do it for you in a little bit. I go, you got to give me some space here, you know. 10 miles out in the country, there's nothing to do. I was the entertainment for the afternoon, Sunday afternoon, right? So my dad hands me the phone, and it's a guy who runs a large consignment auction in Cornley, and he says, hey, kid. I go, hi. His name was Mark. Hi, Mark. I called him boss since day one. Hey, kid, can you help me on Tuesday? And I said, what do you want me to do? And he says, well, you went to auction school, didn't you? I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, Dad, who fought me going to auction school, who was really a critical thinker, you know, why are you doing that? Look how many auctioneers there are in the country. He basically got me my first job right when I walked in the house. And then he helped us get jobs throughout my dad was a sales guy, sold T&L pivots, and he was around the country, and he knew stuff was going on, and he'd say, you should go see that person about having a sale. I often think the reason my career took off is because at the time, I had the freedom. I was farming, you know, with my dad, using his machinery, probably stealing his diesel fuel, and not still making any money in the 80s. But at the time, I had the freedom to go see people. Like, Dad wanted me to go see these Shemiks from Tarnoff, you know, these 3 sisters. He went to school with some of them about selling some land, and I had the freedom to take off on a Wednesday and go do that. You know, Michael and Max had real jobs that paid, you know, and they couldn't leave during the week. And so I often think it's my ag background that got me in the auction business. But there's so many auctioneers out there. Like in the 80s, it was just so bad. The economy was so terrible that when you go to a wedding dance, because that's another podcast story. Mark and I used to DJ a lot of wedding dances, but you'd go out there and you'd say, hey, anybody out there can sell the garter? We need a family member or a friend to sell the garter, even though we could do it. We were the DJs, and we're like, we just want a family member or somebody to do it, make it special, take some pictures. And there'd be 5 guys my age, now in their late 50s, middle 50s, late 50s, raise up their hand and go, I can do it, especially if they had 6 or 7 beers in them, you know. And so there's so many auctioneers in their 50s out there. And the reason that is, since we're talking history, is the farm economy was so bad. On a Saturday, there would literally be in the Midwest Messenger, because we counted them the day I was going to auction school, you know, like 120 auctions on a Saturday in Nebraska. It was ridiculous how many sales there were. Everybody was having financial duress. So that was a tough time. But there's a lot of auctioneers out there, folks.
But that's not how we really got started. I mean, Ron skipped a lot of information there. I mean, when he come back from auction school, he did the halftime of the basketball pie sale. Mm-hmm. You know, you had to sell the baked goods for the fundraiser stuff. And then, of course, we were both pretty good in FFA, and our shop teacher wanted to sell some stuff, or the school wanted to sell some stuff, so we had a little sale there. But I remember one of the first sales we had was my sister was dating a guy by the name of Todd, and his mother,
Nancy Nordine.
Yes, his mother was moving to Arizona, and she had a household full of stuff, and they wanted to sell that household stuff. So we had that little sale, and I remember Mom was clerking. She was being the cashier, and that was the day, too, when we called each other on the phone and said, what should we wear? You know, what should we put on? Because I said, you know, we should kind of look like a team. And Ron, I asked him, what do you got in your closet? And he said, I got a green shirt. Well, I didn't have a green shirt. I got a denim shirt. Well, I didn't have a denim shirt, but we both said, I got a yellow shirt. Hey, he was a president in FFA, and I was a reporter when he was a senior and I was a junior. So we had a matching FFA shirt that had the words FFA over the, you know, where your pocket's supposed to be on your left-hand side. And I said, let's wear that. We took a piece of duct tape and we covered over the FFA, and we just put our name, Ron and Mark, on those shirts. And we wore those yellow shirts for the Nancy Nordine sale. And then after that sale, we had the little FFA shop auction. We sold an old Forge that they hadn't used forever. I mean, I think there was 20 people
tires.
There was 20 people there, but whatever. They just needed to generate a couple $100. And those are the kind of sales that we had early on. We had Rex Kunselman's sale with Dennis Fowkes early on. And because we were just young to the game, and Rex says, I want you guys, because Rex was the director of the Farm Service Agency.
He was friends of our parents.
And good friends with Dad. And he knew we were in the, Ron went to auction school, and we had the Nancy Nordine sale. And he says, well, I'll do it, but I'll hire you guys, but I want Dennis to be there, because Dennis has been in this thing for a long time, and maybe he could teach you. Now, fast forward 35 years, we ended up, you know,
Dennis Fowkes Realty and Auction Company.
Yeah, we ended up acquiring Dennis's business when he wanted to retire, and Dennis is still working with us today as a real estate professional, you know, 40 years later. But we had that sale, and a sale shortly thereafter, we actually took off the yellow shirts, and we were wearing a blue denim shirt, and it was a mutiny. The people in the crowd were so disappointed, because they said, where are your yellow shirts? Now, we don't even know where you guys are to bid to. And that was like a ding, 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 you know. You just had to be easily seen so people could look at you when they wanted to bid or wink, because back then, you know, there was a lot of winking going on, right? And so we went back to the yellow shirts, and it stuck that way forever. But our big claim to advance forward was a couple sales. And the William Broughton estate was one of them. The Larry Collins sale was another big sale. These were back in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, so there was a stretch from 1984 for 7 or 8 years where we were grinding it out.
Yes, I remember going to auction school, and one of the things they said, which I'll never forget to this day, if you're going to get in the auction business, you got to work for free. You got to work for free at the bake sales. You got to do the benefit auctions. You got to work for free, and you can't worry about money. Well, being a farm background in the 80s, you didn't worry about money because there was no money. I mean, it was zeros. So you really didn't worry about the money. But every time I got the chance, you got the chance, and we still do that today. to do an auction in front of some people. You just do it. You do it for free, and that really pays off. But probably what I remember being our breakthrough moment is the Bill Broughton estate auction. So we got a letter from an attorney in Albion, and it said, put in your bid for the Bill Broughton estate auction.
They were selling land and machinery.
They were selling land and machinery.
We got to talk about the real estate licensing that you got. We had to be 21 years of age to get a real estate license.
Yeah.
So you were doing benefit auctions early on, and that was Dad's idea. He says, well, if you guys are going to get in the business, get your real estate license because it goes hand in hand. Well, you got your real estate license, and of course, you had to hang it with somebody for
Platt College in Northeast Technical
Central Community College.
Central Community College, yeah.
So
Northeast.
we're plugging those, aren't we?
We're plugging the colleges. Yeah.
There we go. So you got your real estate license, and then you worked under another real estate company for 2 years.
That was Dad's friend too.
And then you took your test, got your broker's license, and I got my salesperson's license, and then that's when Stock Realty and Auction Company
was born.
actually started when you were 21 years of age.
Yeah.
Because I was a salesperson at age 18, I think, right? I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, we were pretty, Because first farm we sold was for the Cohen's family on the way to church, just the neighbor's farm down the road. We go to church. Proud moment when we had our sign sitting there. I'm riding in the back of the station wagon with my sisters, and I got a sign on the left-hand side of the road on the Cohen's family farm, and it said our names on it. It's like, we finally arrived. Dad, can we get our own car?
It was kind of fun because we had Zavadil in Humphrey, Nebraska. They own the Humphrey Democrat.
Irene was a painter.
Irene hand painted our signs.
Yeah, we'll put a little blurb on the.
We had a yellow background. She had a black, and she did it. I mean, we watched her do it. She would just take that brush, and without having any stencils whatsoever, she had all those freehand letters and numbers were ideal. And Don and Irene Zavadil run the Humphrey Democrat for years, and
did a lot of printing for us.
Yes, did a lot of sale bills early on. So anyway, so we got the real estate business, and was doing the personal property auctions. And that's when the letter came from the attorney, because we started going around to all the attorneys and say, hey, we got real estate licenses. We're Stock Realty and Auction Company.
We were still living in the Love Shack.
Yeah.
900 square foot
700
house.
square foot. Don't give it that much
700
credit.
square foot house down the road from where our parents lived. They could watch us through the valley.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're living at the Love Shack, and we get this letter from the attorney, and he said, put in your bid for the Bill Broughton estate auction. So we went over there and looked at the machinery, met the school marm. The deceased, Bill Broughton, he was about 75 when he died, and his older sister was 83, Helen Waterbury. She lived in Omaha. She was a school marm, about 5'2" tall. And every time we were there looking at the machinery, we'd think of reasons to go back to talk to her, because it would have been a breakthrough sale, and it was a breakthrough sale. But she kept saying, what am I going to do with Billy's dog? He cries in the morning. He howls when Billy's supposed to come out of the house. He howls to the west when Billy's supposed to be coming in for chores. It just breaks my heart. What are we going to do with Billy's dog? So at the time, Mark's future brother-in-law, John Preister, was raised in Wetmouth, St. Bernards. And I remember being over at his house, and this is in the late 80s, early 90s. And the dogs are licking him in the face, and he's selling these Wetmouth St. Bernards to these mothers with these small children, how gentle the dogs are. He said, just let them lick them in the face. And $250 a dog, that would be like $3,000 a dog today. So we called up John Price and said, John, we're going to go over to Helen Waterbury's, and you're going to let that dog lick you in the face. And it's going to be a beautiful scene, set up the scene. And it just was perfect. Saturday, Mark and myself and John Price went over there.
Put a little peanut butter on John's face just to make sure it worked.
Helen come out. It was 10 in the morning on a winter day. She come out in just a jacket over her clothes, and she's standing on top of the stoop, and we're down there, and the dog comes up there, and John is just letting that dog lick him. Oh, you got such a good dog. And then we said, Helen, if you hire us for your sale, this dog is going to grow up 15 miles east of here. I've got a bunch of sisters. We're going to pet the dog every day. We're going to feed him. And she says, well, you could take him now. But we had luckily, this is where dumb luck comes into play. We had luckily brought a car. And she said, and I said, Helen, we're not going to put the dog in the car. I go, when we come back to do your sale and we bring the pressure washers, we're going to put the dog in the back of the pickup. And she's like, so then this was a Saturday. So Monday we got a call from Larry, the attorney in Albion, And he says, hey, guys, this is Larry. What did you guys do to Helen Waterbury? And we're like, we didn't do nothing. And he goes, well, he told me to throw all the other auctioneers away, throw them in the trash. You got the land, you got the equipment. And Mark and I are not that big of huggers, but I remember us bear hugging that day because we knew something just happened by a freaking miracle because we're doing household sales. And this is an auction that usually Dennis Fowkes got or one of 4 other 5 big names got. And so we literally spent the winter waxing everything. I think the sale was January, first week of January, maybe second week of January.
We did the real estate one day and the machinery shortly thereafter. But this sale was an epic sale because it had 856s and 806s and 706 tractors that were pristine. Billy Broughton never unhooked anything. So he had a 4-row planter hooked onto one tractor. He had a 4-row cultivator hooked onto another tractor. He had a rotary hoe hooked onto another tractor. They never were unhooked. And they all sat inside a shed, and they were unbelievably well. I remember the one tractor sold for $14,000 or $15,000, and the guy that drove 3 or 4 states away, every time it would get too high, he would bid once, he'd shake his head no, he'd turn around and walk away. That's when John Kennedy, one of the world's greatest ringman alive, would follow him out in the crowd and say, come on, man, come on, buddy, bid again. He'd turn around and he'd push it another $1,000. He'd throw his hands up in the air and say, no, that's ridiculous. John Kennedy would follow him a little bit more. He'd go another 20 steps. Now he's on the outer edge of the crowd and there's 1,200 people in this sale. He'd turn around, he'd pound it another $1,000. Those images are still in my head because there were so many people in that sale. And when we got done with that particular auction, then sold the land, because the land sold extremely well too.
We learned a big lesson on our big first land auction. Yeah. The lesson was you don't combine the tracks. There's 4 quarters of land. Yeah. Track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4. Track 5 is all combined together. The ground was worth $1,500 an acre that day. It was bringing $1,100 in, it bringing $1,600, $1,700 an acre. And the people that bought it thank us every day because that ground is now worth $15,000 an acre. But
that sale then took us into several other opportunities, and Larry Collins was, one of those situations. And then we stumbled into a guy by the name of Jim Hemmer.
I want to talk back on that Helen Waterbury sale that we got. We had 1,400 people at that sale. We've never had a crowd. We've had crowds equal, but never greater than that sale. We had everything lined up pretty as you please, everything washed and waxed, 12 feet between stuff, laid out a twine. I mean, the sale was set up presidential. And all I can say is the reason we did such a good job, and hopefully we still do, is because we had plenty of time on our hands. I mean, it was wintertime. We were farm boys. My dad never had any livestock. We hauled hay for a living. My dad's hauling hay. But we had plenty of time. So on the nice days, we really overdid it.
Well, anyway, we fast forward to a number of sales. And, I just want to touch base a little bit on Jim Hemmer, because we did a collector tractor sale for Jim Hemmer. Jim Hemmer was a commercial pilot. He was a truck driver at a construction company. He was a former Nance County assistant sheriff back in his younger days. He was just kind of a larger-than-life character from Genoa, Nebraska. And he had these antique tractors stored in this little shed because he was going to sell his building, I think, to Pat Mahoney or something at the time, and that's way back.
Yep.
But he said, boys, come out, but I want to have a colored sale bill. And that was one of the first colored sale bills we ever put together for Jim Hemmer. Jim Hemmer was also, he was a pilot. He taught me how to fly after we started our business relationship with him. So that's where I got my pilot's license with Jim Hemmer as my coach. But
can't talk enough good about Jim Hemmer. Yeah. I mean, Jim Hemmer was one of the major mentors in our life. And Jim Hemmer, I think there's a couple things. We really put Jim Hemmer on a pedestal, and we need to. But we were trained as kids to really honor our elders. I mean, if somebody was older, we just totally listened to them. We were taught to listen to them, to learn from them. And if you think back at home, we were surrounded by older people in our house, older than our dad. Our dad was a young father, so he was been 40, and he was always around people that are 60. So even our dad liked to be around older people. So Jim Hemmer was our senior by about 30 years, and he had been around the block, and he was so convincing. He says, you boys are too talented to be doing the household sales. I go, Jim, we're kicking butt on these household sales. He goes, you're losing $500 every household sale you do. I go, how you figure? So he wrote it on a piece of paper. He's missing one finger. So when he wrote one hand, he's always missing one. He's missing this finger. Cut it off in a saw somewhere. Anyway, so he's writing it out and showing me on paper. if you figure your time, your gas, hanging up those sale bills doing that, you're losing $500 every sale. So on the household sales, he suggested we start just going to a flat fee, a percentage plus 20 or 2,500, whichever's greater. And people would still hire us, 2,500, and they could hire the auctioneer down the road for 10%. We were 10% or 2,500, and they could hire the auctioneer down the road for 10% of an average household sale was $6,000-$7,000. I tell people, I go, you can hire that other guy for $700. Why are you hiring me for $2,500? Because we were trying to talk people out of hiring us. We were just getting too busy. 2 household sales every weekend. You're doing one, I'm doing one. It's just getting to be a lot. And DJing on the weekends, it was getting insane. And farming, it was insane, buddy. So anyway, we got going, and people would say, we're going to hire you because you're going to the guys that'll clean the house out. And I say, I don't understand. He says, you guys are going to leave the house. You guys always leave the yard clean, get the dumpster. And we just took that by storm. When we leave, our reputation was the house was clean. I remember the one sale in Spalding, we're literally rolling up the carpet. We got a truck, 2 trucks from the country because the lady wanted the house clean. We sold the house too. We literally rolled up the carpet, took down the drapes, threw them in a truck, left that house clean. What are we, house cleaners? Apparently we're house cleaners. So anyway, we started doing house. We could not turn that off. The household sales were going gangbusters. We kept with 3,500. We could not turn them off. And so finally one day we just said,
Jim Hemmer said, you guys
got to quit it.
Stop.
Oh, that was hard. One guy stopped by my office in St. Ed. He goes, Ron Stock, you guys have had 5 sales for my family. You're doing one for my aunt in Cedar Rapids. I go, no, we're not. I said, I've just told, I told 50 people in the last year that I'm not doing their household sale. And he come over, look at it. Well, we walked in the house in Cedar. I told him the whole time driving there, I'm not doing it. He walked in, and there's remember those Victrola, those console stereos? Everybody's grandparents has got one. And they talk about how good it sounds. Now, you must have to have a drink in your hand to get it to sound good, because when they put the record on it, it would go, doesn't that sound good? Well, he walks in, he goes, Ron, there's a lot of dollars in here. This thing is going to bring $500. And we had sold more of them for $25 than we ever sold for $100. And I told him, I'm not doing your household sale. So he sees me a month and a half later. Ron, I wish you guys would have done my sale. Guess what that Victrola sold for? They gave it away. Guess what it sold for? I go, $25. He goes, $50. I said, I think you got a fair market value. I think you done pretty damn good. But anyway, we quit doing household sales, and that was probably the turning point of, if we wouldn't talk about change, we always talk about change. We can't change. We should stay the same. If we'd still be doing household sales, buddy, we'd still be good at them.
Well, Jim Hemmer said, let's go see some dealers. He said, let's turn you into a Taylor and Martin. He said, you guys got a lot of skill, a lot of talent, you got a lot of energy. Let's turn you into a Taylor Martin. So we jumped in his King Air that he was flying around corporate, and we went to see a couple John Deere dealers that we arranged in advance by calling and say, hey, would you meet us at the Lucy Lou's Cafe? And we had 10 dealers there and dealer principals. And we'd have a nice little meal, and we'd say, we want to put together a big sale. Why don't you guys all commit to $500,000? And we'll put a sale together. And our good friend Ron Lucas from Goodland, Kansas, was the spearhead of that. Ron's a great guy to this day.
There's a lot to that story.
Oh, totally.
While we're on camera, Mark Stock was you were at a sale that a competitor had from Minnesota at a dealer auction. And I remember you coming home going, Ron, these dealer auctions, we can do them way better than the guys that are doing them. And you took off in a 10-year-old Lincoln Continental, because there's an attorney told you if you're going to be in business, you got to have a Lincoln. So you bought a 10-year-old Lincoln. He took off with a ballpoint pen in his hand and a business card that you probably had to black out household auctions. And down the road, he went all the upper part of Kansas, and he said, I'm going to build a dealer auction. And he was about to, I remember him being down in the mouth, Mark calling up from the motels going, gosh, this isn't easy. But he got to Ron Lucas, and Ron Lucas was a Nebraska born and bred.
He was working as a district manager, or territory manager for John Deere, who transplanted to O'Neill and lived in O'Neill for a while, and he got hooked on Nebraska football because he's never seen anything like it. So I walked in Goodland, Kansas, John Deere dealer Ron Lucas, and he had all this Husker memorabilia on the wall. So we just started talking about Nebraska football, and that was a lesson that I learned, that when I went in to see people, I wasn't going there to necessarily get their business, even though that was the motive. I was trying to figure out who they were as people. And to this day, I'll walk into somebody's house and I'll look at a picture on the wall and I'll say, where was that picture taken?
And you genuinely want to know.
I do want to know. They have pictures of their family on their refrigerator. Everybody does, right? And I said, well, what's this picture of? Because when I find out what it is about their family that makes them tick, then I can try to figure out how I can help them a little bit better, because we're in the service business. We have to help people, especially all these folks that are retiring. I mean, you go into the time I went to over by Diller, Nebraska, and this gentleman and his wife, they wanted to have a sale. And I said, hey, you got a big family? Because, yeah, that's probably the reason why we're having our sale. I said, because of your big family? Because, well, no, my daughter just lost her husband. He had cancer and he died. And they live in another state. So we're going to have a machinery sale. We're going to rent out the farmland. And we're going to go take care of my wife or my daughter's 2 little kids because she's got to have a full-time job. So now you understood the motive and understood why they were in the position they were. And I tell you what, when you understand what people are going through, you work a lot harder for them.
100%. 100%. So that Ron Lucas sale was our first big dealer auction in Oakley, Kansas. We ended up having that auction for 5 more years. And when the farmers...
Always a blizzard in Oakley.
Always a blizzard. Always a whiteout blizzard.
The radio DJs would call us up and say, when's your Oakley sale? When's your sale coming to Oakley? Because
25.
we're so dry here because you guys always bring an inch of snow with you.
There was a blizzard after blizzard, and we learned that from another mentor. Mark Noonan said, don't ever cancel a sale. And I tell you, we never did cancel a sale.
No.
And the reason you never cancel a sale is people don't come back the second time.
Yeah.
So we had a reputation of never canceling a sale in a whiteout blizzard. Prices were still good. And that's hard to believe, but we've never canceled a sale.
Jim Hemmer was the guy that stimulated that, go see all these dealers and put this all together. And Jim Hemmer got a real estate license. Mm-hmm. He was working with us as a real estate agent, a hell of a sales guy. Jim Hemmer was an auctioneer for us too. I mean, here's a guy that was a corporate pilot. He could do almost anything.
65 when he went to auction school.
Yeah. He did all that stuff, and unfortunately, he died at, I think he was 68.
Yeah.
It would be 21 years in this June when he passed away because my son, Eric was born just a couple weeks after his funeral. And he just got cancer, and he just went down.
He'd pick a sale. Fast. In the morning, he'd call up and say, we're going to go sell a farm. We'd have 8 farms listed. He goes, which one you want to sell? And I'd say, I don't know. What do you mean? He goes, pick one. Pick any farm. And we'd pick one farm, and we would go out that day, and we'd sell it. And to this day, that's all it takes is focus and a deadline. And by 5 o'clock that afternoon, we had that farm sold, and we went right down the list. I mean, it was that, like,
you just had to go ask people.
We're selling this farm today. Make us an offer.
You want to buy it or not? Well, come back and see me a week. He taught us that lesson. He goes, oh, no, you don't go back. You just say, we're here today, and if you ain't going to do it, we're going to go see the next guy. He's going to buy it. And you just talk to people like that, and by golly, it worked. So it worked. And Jim Hemmer was a great mentor to us. And,
yes.
And Larry Collins was another guy that we had a sale for. Got a real estate license, worked as a real estate agent. A guy by the name of, in Bellevue, Kansas, Norm Hanshaw.
Yep.
He was a John Deere dealer principal. He was retiring, and he was hiring a different company out of Minnesota. Ron and JB are going to Kansas. They stopped and they called me and said, Mark, jump in the plane and fly out and see Norm Hanshaw, because we just heard in town when we fill up with gas that he's going to have an auction.
That was a little practical joke we played on you that day. Norm Hanshaw was a guy, every time we went into a store, he was moody. Now, me and Don Kaiser or John Buell or Jim Stock went on some sales runs with us. When we go into a dealer, we always went in 2 people at a time. But that Norm Hanshaw was such a mean guy, and we ended up being a really good friend and not a mean guy. But he was such a mean guy at 10 o'clock in the morning. Me and JB, I remember drawing straws. You go in. No, you go in. No, you go in. So you'd go in there, and he would say, guys, he talked real expressive. Guys, I ain't going to sell anything. Why do you guys keep stopping here? Well, we going right through. Honestly, he had a good cup of coffee. We stole a cup of coffee from the guy when we went in. But we heard he was having a sale out on the road, and we thought we'd play a practical joke on Mark's stock. Mark, there's a guy in Belleville having an auction. His name is Norm Hanshaw. You go see him. And when we hung up the phone, we were giggling like he is going to go get his butt chewed. And Mark calls up the next day and says, I'm 90% there. I think I got the sale. You shut your mouth. He is not hiring you. And I don't know how in the hell you did it, buddy.
I flew the plane in. I called Norm up, and I didn't know Norm at all. And I said, hey, I heard you're having a sale. Is that correct? He goes, yeah, but I already got my auctioneer. I said, did you sign the papers? He goes, well, no. I said, well, then there's a chance. I said, I'm flying into the airport. Can you have somebody pick me up in 2 hours? And he said, you're going to fly into the airport? I went, yeah, I'll fly in. I'll meet you in 2 hours. So I jumped in the old 172, landed there at the airport, and he come and picked me up. And, my 172 wasn't a fancy plane, but it was a nice little plane. We went back to his office. These guys, you haven't had any sales like this. I've got the auctioneer I'm going to pick. They're the ones that are doing all.
You're wasting your time.
And I said, what do I have to do to ever get a chance? I go see dealer after dealer after dealer, and everybody tells me the same story. When in the hell is somebody actually going to give me a chance? Because that's all I want is a chance.
Whatever you said to him, you won him over, buddy.
And he looked at me, he goes, huh. He says, you just want a chance. I said, I can do everything that all these other people are doing, and I can do it better. But nobody will ever know because nobody's giving me a chance. Nobody's giving me a chance. And the 7 signs of successful people, and I didn't know this at the time because I was just going off instinct where you just got to ask people to help you. Yep. I was asking him to help me. Give me a chance. And he called us up the next day. He says, if you want the sale, you can have it.
I couldn't believe it.
And then we sent, our good friend Tommy Drawl down and John Dickey and a handful of other people, and they were there for 2 weeks getting his sale ready to go. And he had an unbelievable retirement auction. It totaled up way more than he thought. He said, guys, the sale was so good. I'm taking you to the country club. And we're going to have a good old party because this guy loved to go to the country club. And this was a month and a half later because, it took us a month to get this whole thing ready. And he was a little bit under the influence, and he says, you guys did everything right, but you screwed up on one thing. And I said, well, I'm here to learn, sir. What did we screw up on? He says, we should have had drinks and a meal a month before to know that you guys are really as good as you are. He says, because I'm really finding out how good you guys are after you did my sale. And so now we've learned another lesson. When you book a deal, let's go out to have a meal early on. Mm-hmm. Let's get to know each other. Do something besides outside of work to start building that relationship because it is a relationship business. And
he ended up getting a real estate license. So there you're studying the lesson. Jim Hemmer had a sale. He worked for us. Larry Collins, first guy. Second guy, worked for us. Norm Hanshaw worked for us. Don Kaiser's sale works for us. So this is a lesson I always tell BigIron. BigIron's having a lot of stress finding some setup crews in different states. It's like they're all in your bidder base. The people we've had sales for are the people that will work for us, and they know the business because they had a sale themselves. I've been saying that for several years, and I'm sure we're hiring some of those kind of people.
Well, I hope Ron Stock.
We're looking for setup people, by the way.
Now, all this time, Ron Stock, we were doing personal property sales, farm machinery auctions, and selling farms and houses in the real estate side at the same time. And a lot of these folks that we had these sales for, specifically some of the retired farmers, they got real estate licenses and hung their licenses under our stock realty and auction company. See, I'm looking. I retroed here. I retroed back into a stock realty and auction company shirt, and of course then. My wife got a real estate license, and we opened up an office in Kansas. We opened up an office in Broken Bow. We opened up an office in Columbus, Nebraska at the Bedrock Building. We opened up different locations, which is a lesson in life. Now we're learning all we need to do is open up another vehicle, just have another vehicle driving.
Well, at that time, offices were something that was probably necessary, but it's gone by the wayside.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, our wives were very instrumental in all of this,
Yeah, Kristen was on the road with us, traveling and clerking the sales. And
my wife was coming out when she could, but she was raising babies at home, so that's what her job was.
Kristen and I never had any children, so we're able to be on the road doing the outside sales and setting up sales. I remember us being down in Coleman, Alabama, setting up those sales, driving back in a
Hereford,
Twister.
Texas.
And Kristen's telling me, we're 40 years old, upper 30. She says, you think we're going to be able to do this when we're 50? And I said, I don't know. And she said, we should sell all this stuff online. Because at that time, we were doing little posters and pictures, selling it. But anyway, that's for later on.
That's foreshadowing, Ron Stock.
That's
you just foreshadowing.
Oh. She said the word. She said a four-letter word. We should do all this stuff online.
Well, we had to learn a lot about the real estate business and relationships with people then, and of course the art of selling a farm and a ranch and all that kind of good stuff. So that was all part of our growth and development in those first formidable years of being in this space. And you got your broker's license. I got a broker's license. A lot of other people, Jim and John Stock, joined us. They started out in the auction business, and then they got real estate licenses. And today they sell a lot of good. They're top producers. But so the company evolved over time, and I think we'll wrap up this show, and we're going to foreshadow into the next episode when we start talking about what happened in the late 90s and early 2000s in this space. And we want to thank all the listeners. We want to thank the directors and the producers and the people behind the scenes, the Ericas and the Danny and the Danas and the Bobbies and the Sarahs and everybody else. And I should never start with names, Ron Stock, because we learned a long time ago.
You always
I'm going to
miss
forget
out.
somebody.
You've never learned that.
Because we got Emily. Can't forget Emily.
See, I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to forget you.
But hey, if you enjoy this podcast, tell all your friends. Have them listen in, as we're going to talk about a little bit of everything and a little bit of nothing all at the same time. It's amazing how that all works.
If you don't listen, if we don't get some viewers, we're not going to do this forever. So we're just going to do it as long as we get some people following it. So if you like it, please tell people. Otherwise, we don't want to waste your time.
Thank you very much. Let's see you next time.